All right, we'll get going. Again, everybody, thank you so much for being here. This is the World Lacrosse Rules Change Overview. World Lacrosse just launched the new rulebook for the women's field sector. Other sectors will follow this year. And so tonight we're going to take an opportunity to go through a number of changes and get everybody ready for the next upcoming women's field season. Really exciting year for women's field lacrosse in North America. So excited to take everybody through this. If anybody has any questions at any point throughout tonight's call, I'll just urge you to unmute yourself and say, "Hey, Hannah." That would be great. And we will go from there. I'm just letting some people in as they join the group. Okay. I'll start with our land acknowledgement. At this time, we would like to give thanks to the creator for giving us the game of lacrosse. Lacrosse is medicine to the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, and we want to thank them for sharing this medicine with the world. We would also like to give thanks to all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as we all sit in their territories. We say thank you to the creator for giving us Mother Earth. She then gave us the tree that our sticks are made from. This is the true roots of the medicine we call lacrosse today. Thank you, and thank you for being here. So our agenda tonight, just to give you a sense of how we'll be going through the content. My goals are to provide a brief overview of World Lacrosse rule change process and cycle, so you have a sense of how we've gotten here. I'm going to try and outline the specific motions that were approved and that will appear and do appear in the new rule book to give you a sense of if you were involved at the last World Cup, you'd have a sense of how the next World Cup is going to look by comparison. And then we're going to review the shot clock proposal that's been included in the new rulebook as it relates to Lacrosse Canada. And again, questions are going to be encouraged tonight throughout. Please just unmute yourself. I don't have a good sense of people with video on or off. So if you're holding your hand up, I won't see you. And if somebody has something in the chat, Karina or Brad, I'm going to ask that you guys just unmute yourselves and remind me that somebody's in the chat. My computer screen's kind of small today. But yeah, questions are encouraged. I think it'll help everybody get more out of tonight's session if you ask the questions that come up. I see a chat. Okay. So just a little bit about me. So my name's Hannah Burnett. I'm a World Lacrosse level 2 rated official, and I'm the OWFL Director of Officiating. I'm also the Lacrosse Canada official in charge for women's field lacrosse. I've been refereeing since 2009 on the women's side, and I have a little bit of sixes experience, but women's field is kind of my bread and butter and the thing that really hypes me up. And I've become the World Lacrosse or the Lacrosse Canada rules guru. So that's why I'm interested in leading tonight's session. I am a member of the World Lacrosse rules subcommittee. So I was part of the team that helped draft the new rule book. So the minutia of how this all went down is very, very near to me, having been a part of it. And I'm just coming off my fourth World Championship this past summer in Hong Kong as an on-field official. So I'm still very involved with the game. I'm very excited to see the direction that the women's field game is taking and excited to seeing where it's going moving forward. And just a reminder, please, if you don't have a question, please mute yourself. So before we go forward, who will be using these rules? So at World Lacrosse events, including the inaugural PALA Women's Field Lacrosse Qualifier in late June, they're going to use this rule book that we're going to go through tonight as written. This is the first time that countries will have to qualify for a world championship event. So it's a big deal that we're getting to the point where we're large enough and have, enough international interest to have to qualify for a World Cup instead of it just being anybody that's coming is going to participate. At that PALA Women's qualifier in June in Florida, there will not be a shot clock in use. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. The final event without a shot clock is going to be the 2026 World Championships in Japan. So if you're on this call because you're interested in playing for Team Canada and you're curious to know how the rules are going to be progressing between now and then, up until Japan, there will be no shot clock at international events, but preparing for those events in future that will have a shot clock, that's why that rule's been included in the rulebook as of right now. If you're interested in this call tonight from a Lacrosse Canada perspective, so let's say you're a member of one of the provinces that's going to be competing at the U19 JEWL Cup this year, these rules will be written or will be used as written with no modifications. In the past year, the past few years, we've had a couple of minor modifications, but that is not the plan moving forward. Everyone's kind of really excited about this rule book. So we will take it from there in terms of Lacrosse Canada. And a shot clock will be used in 2025 and 2026, host permitting. BC is hosting this summer, and they believe they'll have the capacity to use a shot clock at our JEWL Cup this year.
My name to Tavares because that's which they send it to.
Hey, Paula, 1 second, just mute yourself, thanks. And then provinces may opt to make development-oriented rule modifications from there. So I know here in Ontario, the OWFL will be using these rules as written with no modifications for our JEWL League, our under-19 Elite League. That means that some changes compared to last year that won't otherwise come up are like there's no more mercy rule, that type of thing. And then all of those modification clarifications are available on the OWFL website under the officials page. But otherwise, if you're from a different province other than Ontario and you're curious how these rules are going to be implemented in your province, please seek confirmation with your official in charge within your province. They will know now that these have been set, what the plans are going to be for your summer season or for your fall season. How did we get here? This is a sport that has a lot of rule changes, and I think there's been a lot of contentious changes over the last, let's say, just like since before the pandemic. I think we're finally back on track, and I'm really excited about how these rules have come forward in terms of like getting to a place where they're a little less silly, where there's some things that people have always looked at women's field lacrosse and gone like, why? Just why? And I mean that as somebody who has a deep love and affection for this game. But to understand how we get here, proposals are requested from World Lacrosse. So World Lacrosse sends a email out to all the member nations. And if you are a country that wants to submit a proposal, you have to have 2 other countries, including one that's from a different continent, support your proposal that you submit forward. So this year, Lacrosse Canada submitted some proposals, Germany submitted some proposals, and Taiwan submitted proposals this year, I believe. Proposals are then reviewed by the World Lacrosse Rules Committee for Women's Field Lacrosse. And there's discussion, and that committee, which that was the committee I was a part of, think about how those implications are, or how those rules being implemented would have implications across the game. Proposals are then drafted and presented to the World Lacrosse community on a call just like this one, and then the voting period opens. So Lacrosse Canada had a vote on whether to implement these rules in this new rulebook. They require a 2/3 majority to pass. And countries who have participated in a previous World Lacrosse Championship are invited to vote. So Lacrosse Canada does get a vote in addition to being able to submit rule proposals. We are currently on a 2-year rule cycle. I'm hoping that that changes to a 4-year cycle in the future, but we'll see what World Lacrosse wants to do. And there's going to be a new committee structure moving forward too. So there's definitely going to be a trend moving forward to see sixes, men's field lacrosse, box lacrosse, and women's field lacrosse not lose their unique identities, but simplify and consolidate some things that are done similarly but different for no other reason than that's just the way they've always been done. Something as simple as referring to the goalie as the goalkeeper in our book and a goalie in a box lacrosse book, up to changing something like what we refer to an official on the field as. So I would anticipate a lot of those changes moving forward as we get into this new World Lacrosse Rules Committee. The motions that were put forward for voting, there were 27 in total. That's a lot of motions for one rule change cycle. And it can be a little overwhelming to think, oh my God, there's 27 things that have changed in the women's game. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? But I promise you they are not all that bad. And they're actually all quite minor in the positive sense, in that we're trying to get away from those silly type rules that have not really been important to the game for a while. The sixes game has really shown that women's field players are capable of playing an intense version of the game that's high speed without having to maybe over officiate. So there's some removal of that type of stuff. And then in addition to the 27 changes that were proposed, there's also a whole bunch of editorial clarifications, consolidation, and reordering within the book. So if you have read the rule book before, this is a very new version of that rule book. In terms of the shot clock specifically, it was approved separately from the rule cycle that we went through at the end of 2024 into 2025. It was approved by World Lacrosse members in a one-off vote earlier in 2024. It has been included in this rule book as a separate rule at the very end of the book. But as we mentioned, it's not going to be effective until 2027 after Japan. And the reason it's included in this rule book, but not in use in World Lacrosse events yet, is to give countries time to adapt and adopt that 80-second shot clock. Not just because it's going to change the way we play the game a little bit, but there's a financial burden to find shot clocks that work outdoors on grass fields in the rain. So that's the reason it's been included. We're trying to give countries an opportunity to find the resource itself before it becomes a mandatory part of the international game. And we're going to go into the specifics of the shot clock at the end, because it's not actually news. My absolute favorite meme that I have seen all year, I think speaks very readily to the why women's field can be a little odd.
Why? Why? Oh, that's why.
We're trying to get into some no-nonsense rules for women's field and take the game to the next level so that people don't get bogged down in the minutia of like, we do it this way in every other version. Why does women's do it differently? This is the next best step I think we could possibly take in taking the game forward. And thank you again for being here tonight. The value of learning your rules, not just to not be eating in your sleep, is really important. I think it helps increase player IQ. It definitely helps increase coaches' IQ. It helps make it a much more entertaining environment to be a part of on the field when you're with an engaged community that gets this game. So thanks for taking the time tonight. So let's dive in. We're going to go through the 27 motions for change, all passed. So 27 things were voted on, all 27 passed with a 2/3 majority, which means they're all going to get implemented. With two exceptions, there's like if this passes, this doesn't pass. So there's actually going to be 25 motions that we discussed tonight as they relate, but you'll see them numbered 1 to 27. And I've reordered them to how they were presented, just to kind of give us a little bit more of a thematic approach to how these motions have been implemented. So we'll warm up with these ones. Something as simple as the coach walk. So the space between the bench where players stand and the field is called the coach walk. And it's now a set length. So if you're playing on a shorter field, that used to shorten the team bench area and shorten the coach walk. Now it's going to be a set 14 meters. That's how much space you have. The second one, mouthguard color. This was maybe the silliest thing about women's field lacrosse. Until this rule book, you were not allowed to wear a clear or white mouthguard. Those are now legal. So we're talking about small things, right? These are not game-changing things. So an exciting one as an official who has to tell people to wear a mouthguard. Very happy about the mouthguard color being a little bit more open. There are also a couple of other miscellaneous equipment changes that didn't get voted on but have been implemented. So there was no designation in our rulebook previously that said a goalie in lacrosse had to wear a lacrosse helmet. Now that designation exists. So if you're playing in an MA or if you're a coach and your goalie has always kind of worn a hockey helmet, that's no longer possible for this. In Lacrosse Canada, under Lacrosse Canada rules and under World Lacrosse rules, your goalie now has to wear a helmet designed for field lacrosse. Additionally, the rule used to say the goalkeeper may wear padded gloves. Now the rule says the goalkeeper must wear padded gloves. It's just common sense to not want to break a thumb or your fingers when you're playing goal. So those are now mandatory. Something that I think people are going to be really excited about, women's field has frequently been called out for questioning why we're the only sector that had pre-game cross inspections for every single stick before every single game. Those have been eliminated. So before every single game now, all that's going to happen is like what happens in the other sectors. The head official is going to go up to your coach and say, "Coach, are your players legally dressed and ready to play the game?" The coach will say yes, and we'll go. If a player wants an official to check their stick, they still can do that and ask, hey, my stick might be borderline, can you check it? Because players are still responsible for their sticks to be legal. However, the pre-game cross inspection has been removed. Another one that people are really excited about is possession timeouts are now permitted. So previously, it was very challenging to call timeouts in a women's field game. They could only be called after goals or when your team had possession of a dead ball anywhere outside the scoring area. Now, possession timeouts are possible outside of either advantage flag area. So if I'm a player, I'm in possession of the ball, my coach wants a timeout, I can request one to the nearest official, or my coach can request in the goal. I'll show you that area in a second. So if I do want that, timeout, I just have to request it. Still no change the number of timeouts. You still get 2 per game, but now you can ask for a timeout when you're in possession of the ball. And then the last one on this slide, we're also allowing stick exchanges on the field now. So whether you're aware of this one or not, previously it was illegal for somebody like a draw taker to use one stick to do the draw and then change sticks on the field with one of their teammates. It was a minor foul. We've eliminated that. So long as the play is so long as you're not in possession of the ball, you can exchange sticks with a teammate, no problem. You can also be handed a stick from the sidelines on a dead ball. Otherwise, if the play is live, you have to get off the field if you want to hand a stick to somebody on the bench, including the coach. Some other ones that kind of ease us into this tonight. The goalkeeper goal score foul has been eliminated. So this is why I got involved in the rules, because I thought this was the dumbest rule possible. And I'm very, very proud and pleased that it's now gone from our rule book. Previously, if a goalie scored a goal on the opponent's net, not only did the goal not count, but it was a foul. So I would be penalized for shooting on an open net or scoring on the opposition's goaltender. That's been eliminated. So now if I'm the goalkeeper and I throw the ball and it ends up in the opposite team's goal, it counts. That is a good goal. As a goalkeeper, I'm still limited in women's field to where I can move up the field. I'm legally allowed to go to the attacking end restraining line. It is still a foul if I cross that attacking end restraining line, but if I standing behind the line and throw the ball at the net and it goes in, that's a goal. So goalies can score now in women's field lacrosse, but they still cannot cross the far restraining line. Motion number 24 is that the body ball foul was eliminated. So this is very common in the US and the NCAA. They've been doing this for a long time. You can now kick the ball. You cannot kick the ball into the opposite team's goal. That will not count. The ball still has to enter off of from your stick. But the body ball foul, in terms of, if a ball plays off my chest and falls to the ground, or if I kick a ball to a teammate, those are now legal elements of play. They're no longer fouls. We also have clarified what in meant in terms of the marking area for 3 seconds. So 3 seconds is a very challenging call to make in women's field lacrosse. It's very similar to 3 in the key in basketball, but before, what was missing was confirmation of if someone's straddling the fan line, 1 foot is in the fan, 1 foot is out of the fan, is that defender eligible for 3 seconds, or are they clear and out of 3 seconds? This clarification says that they are out of 3 seconds as soon as one of their feet is on the line. So that actually is going to make 3 seconds a lot more challenging to get called, to have called. We'll see that there's been some changes to the field lines this year. So, but yeah, the 3 seconds rule has now changed. Instead of having to get both feet outside of the fan, now if 1 foot is on the fan line, you are no longer eligible to be called for 3 seconds. So defense will love that, because they'll get to sag into the fan a little bit easier. Attacking players may not love it so much. We'll see how that plays out. There was a motion that was passed to increase 3 seconds to 4 seconds, but it did not pass in the end because this motion 25 passed. So we still have a 3 seconds rule, not a 4 seconds rule. Thank God. There's a whole bunch of stick specific changes to the rule book to be aware of. Now there can be no holes or gaps in your pocket that are larger than 4.27 centimeters. It's just the size of a standard golf ball. It's a way that pocket holes were often measured, was to like see if a golf ball could fit through. So now we've just changed the sizing to be 4.27 centimeters. If you have read our rule book, you'll notice that there is a whole huge section that's just kind of been like bumped out of the rules and into the appendix. That is the section specific to Rule 3, the cross. And that Rule 3 has been completely rewritten. We've done everything we could to try and simplify the restrictions around stringing to be more in line with other sectors, I think, to make it a little bit more fun for players that like to string sticks, while still making our sticks that still have to be specific to women's field lacrosse fair to use and fair to play. So there are still restrictions, but there's no longer as stringent restrictions on the stick. So the number of minimum and maximum knots and stitches of cross-lacing, that's gone. There's now language to clarify that pre-sewn mesh pockets are legal. Before we just allowed them, but technically there was no language to allow them. Combination pockets. So we've been seeing increasingly, if you think of a stick head, the bottom is leathers and the top is mesh, and they're connected in the middle. That's now by rule legal. And everything's been kind of restructured for clarity. The length of a goal creeper's cross has been increased from 130 max to 140 max. That's because sticks are often sold at 140 max. The extra 10 centimeters isn't doing a lot in women's field, so happy to increase to 140. And then finally, and to align kind of with the pre-game cross inspections being removed, the approved crosses list has also been removed. So you cannot find a stick list of what is legal for women's field anymore. For a stick to be considered legal for women's field lacrosse, it just has to meet all of the specifications in our rulebook and Appendix H, just like in any other version of the game. I know when I was growing up playing, there was always like well, this stick isn't legal because it's not on the list. That's not a thing anymore. So if you do have questions, please send them to your OIC about your sticks. We love photos of sticks. Happy to take a look and make sure that they're still meeting all the criteria, but the criteria have been simplified. So hopefully that makes our game a little bit more accessible moving forward. There's been some changes to stop time. Depending on how your province implemented these over the last few years, you may or may not notice a difference. Some provinces opted to not implement these changes in the first place. But if you were, let's say, a player at the last World Cup, you would have played with only certain fouls stopped the whistle in the last 30 seconds of the first 3 quarters or 2 minutes of quarter 4. But we are going back at a world lacrosse level for Lacrosse Canada to what we used to do, which is that all whistles are going to stop in the last 30 seconds of the first 3 quarters and the last 2 minutes of the 4th quarter. So that is just trying to re-simplify how our stop time works. The change that no one will be used to is that, hopefully for the best, restarts under 30 seconds and 2 minutes are now possible with self-start, even if you're under 30 seconds, so long as self-start is legal in that scenario. So to give you an example, at the last, let's do it this way. In Peterborough, so in the under-19 championships in 2019 in Peterborough, if a ball went out of bounds under 30 seconds, the player would bring it in, and there had to be a whistle start under 30 seconds for that player to restart. Now, all boundary balls at all times are always going to be self-starts. So if a player is allowed to self-start, and they are allowed to self-start on all boundary balls, even if there's a boundary ball with 4 seconds left to go in a quarter, they may restart as a self-start. They don't have to wait for the whistle. It's going to mean that we need lots of extra balls on the sidelines, that officials will need to be very clock aware and ensure that clock's time is being maintained and the integrity of the clock is being maintained. But it also means that your timekeepers need to know what's going on. when a player self-starts, they will need to be told, or they will have to know that they can now restart the clock. So the logistics of this, I'm curious to know how that goes within your provinces, but theoretically, when a player self-starts within 30 seconds, it's now legal. They don't have to wait for a whistle. And on the other side of this story, let's say there is a shooting space call. So it's a major foul within the marking area. That is still a situation where you would never be allowed to self-start ever in the game. You never get to self-start from a hash mark. So the player then would still have to wait for a whistle to restart. But it's only on those other scenarios like boundary balls or midfield fouls where, yes, now they can self-start under 30 seconds. So the speed of the game in the last 30 seconds should be pretty elevated moving forward. There's also been a change to how play can restart near the boundaries. If there is a boundary ball, all boundary balls are now 2 meters inside the field and a self-start. The dots have been moved. They were 2 meters in, now they've been moved to 4 meters. And that's to align with fouls. So if you've played in Canada in the last few years with the dots being 2 meters in, but you were supposed to go 4 meters behind, that was always kind of tough to set up. So now there is a clear 4 meters behind the dot, so that there is space for somebody to set up genuinely 4 meters behind the person that they have fouled. But for the self-starts on boundary balls, it's just always that consistent 2 meters in. What that means is that if a boundary ball happens between the dots, the player who's entitled to the ball no longer needs to go to the nearest dot to restart. They can pick up the ball, they can come right in off the end line, and they can self-start from there, 2 meters in. They do not need to go to the nearest dot before they self-start. So again, just trying to keep the play going, keep the pace of play up. Rule 16 was called the throw. Not anymore. Rule 16 is now called coincidental fouls and alternate possession. We have introduced alternate possession into the women's game in lieu of the throw. So if there are coincidental or simultaneous fouls, it's now going to be just like basketball. Alternate possession is set during the captain's talk. So whoever wins the coin toss can opt to choose first alternate possession or choose the end of the field they'd like to defend. I like this because it really adds some value to our captain's talks. Besides choosing the end you started in, nothing was really going on there. So now you get to choose, just like in football, you know, which one do you want, direction or alternate possession? And now when there is a, you know, our equivalent of a jump ball, so there's 2 simultaneous minor fouls or major fouls or cards, now we're just going to go to alternate possession to see who gets the ball. There's also clarity on what to do with coincidental foul scenarios, on what to do when there are multiple coincidental fouls. And what I'm really excited about from this is that we've also clarified through the rule book that the severity of the foul matters. So in the old rules, if there was a shooting space, for example, and the shooter propelled the ball dangerously into that shooting space, so you had a cardable major foul for the dangers propelled by the shooter, and you had a major foul by the defender who was in shooting space. Those used to be treated as equivalent fouls. So even though a player was being sent off the field for the card, it would have been a throw to see who got possession of the ball upon the restart. Now, a red card is higher than a yellow card, which is higher than a regular major foul over a minor foul. And minor fouls are going to include restraining line violations and goal circle violations for the purposes of alternate possession. So what that means is that if a player is going off the field to serve a card, good, that's fine. But the team that did not receive the yellow card, they're going to be the ones restarting with the ball. So that's Rule 16 and then changes to Rule 16. And again, just a reminder, if anybody has any questions about this, please let me know. You're probably not the only one. There have been some changes to the goal circle rules, 2 specifically. One relates to when the attack has the ball and is the defense allowed to move through the crease. In the last version of the rule book, which Lacrosse Canada ignored this rule, we had the sense that it wasn't a very popular rule change, so we had not been doing it this way. If the ball used to be that if the ball was above the goal line extended, the defense was not allowed through the goal circle. This has been eliminated. The new rule moving forward is kind of what we've been playing with in Lacrosse Canada for the last couple of years. Players in their defending area, so in their defensive end, can move through the goal circle, period. Defensive players can run through any portion while defending. Only the defensive player marking a ball carrier within a stick length is allowed to remain in the goal circle. Otherwise, you do need to continue to move through and get out. So that's kind of, for Lacrosse Canada purposes, just a clarification. Same thing for people who have been playing in the OWFL. I know there's a few on the call tonight. We've been doing this. We never started doing it the other way. And then the other clarification is to make when the defense gets possession of the ball a little bit easier in their defensive end. So players in the defending team who do not have possession of the ball are allowed to run through their goal circle. They are still limited by the 5-second rule if they're in possession of the ball. But if defense is allowed to be in the goal circle, in the old rules, if they, let's say, made an interception while they were inside, it was very unclear about what they then were allowed to do. But now this is clarifying that if your team has possession of the ball and you're on defense, or you're in your defensive end, be it your goalie or one of your teammates, you are allowed to move through the goal circle. It's not a foul. We're not limited to only one player being permitted in that space. But they still do have to abide by the 5-second rule. You can only have possession of the ball for 5 seconds in the goal circle. There's been two kind of really interesting changes to minor fouls. Minor fouls being those kind of like nitpicky, very women's field specific type fouls we've seen in the past. And these are both inspired by the changes to the sixes game, and some really cool things we've seen developing there. Covering has now changed. There is no longer a covering foul in women's field lacrosse. That rule is now called withholding the ball from play. It's much more aligned with men's field. It's much more aligned with sixes. And here is the rule as it appears in the rule book. It says a player must not trap a loose ball on the ground with their stick longer than is necessary to control the ball and pick it up in one continuous motion, if an opponent is able to also play that ball. So if I'm by myself and nobody is around me, it's always been legal for me to cover the ball or to trap the ball. This is saying that exact same thing. If there's nobody around me and I'm trying to pick up a loose ball, a ground ball, a ball that's about to go out of bounds, if no one else could play that ball legally, then I'm allowed to cover it. That's fine. What's different here moving forward is that if someone was able to legally also go for that ball, I'm now not allowed to trap it, but I may rake it to pick it up. So how you decide to teach that to your young players coming up in the game, that's up to you. Trapping the ball, so using your stick to trap the ball so that an opponent can't gain it, that is still withholding the ball from play, and that is a minor foul. But no longer is raking, so coming over the ball, behind the ball, and then scooping the ball up, no longer is that a foul. Or if I'm trying to block somebody with my stick from picking up a loose ball foul or a loose ball on the ground, that is no longer a foul. And I still cannot sit on the ball to withhold it from somebody else. That's also a minor foul. The goalie is still allowed to trap the ball, cover the ball with their hand, their body, their stick inside their goal circle. But outside the goal circle, we are now no longer using the covering foul. We are using the withholding the ball from play foul. So really interested to see how that one goes at the high level. I think it's going to make the game really, or I think there's going to be a lot fewer whistles for those types of just kind of like nitpicky fouls. The other one that's changed, and this is a big one, I think the empty stick check foul has always been a kind of pillar of the women's field game, for better or for worse. Well, it's gone. The empty stick check rule still remains. However, it now says a player must not check or tackle an opponent's empty stick while the opponent is trying to gain possession of the ball in the air. So before, it said a player must not check or tackle an opponent's empty cross, period. Now, it's only when I'm trying to receive a pass, you're not allowed to bat my empty stick out of the way. So this is really exciting. I've seen this in play once in a women's field environment in the last couple of months since this rule came in. It just makes everything go, there's just so fewer whistles. people really need to work a little bit harder to run through ground balls because they're not going to be saved by somebody empty stick checking them. Again, this rule as it's now written only applies when an opponent is attempting to receive a pass. So if I was up against an opponent on the draw circle and we both go up in the air to scoop the ball out of the air, that's not a pass. So long as it's not dangerous, pardon me, so long as it's not dangerous, I could try and bat that player's stick out of the air so that I can get the ball. We'll see how it goes. I mentioned that it can't be dangerous. Dangerous checks are still fouls, so I can't empty stick check somebody's stick recklessly. That would just now be, that has always just been considered a dangerous check, and that's a major foul. That's still a foul. But empty stick checks, the minor ones where it's just like a little empty, those are no longer fouls. So really, really interesting to see these two in play. These two are also thought of in conjunction with the held foul. Holding somebody's stick for a short amount of time during a check, that is still a foul. So Michael has a question. If there are two players going for a ground ball, you can now check their stick prior to the ground ball. Correct. That would not be a foul. If you slash an opponent's stick, that will be a dangerous check, major foul. But if it's an empty stick check that we've always known to be a foul in women's field lacrosse, that is no longer a foul. You're so welcome. Michael, do you mind posting in the chat what level age group you are coaching, if you're a coach? U15. So in U15, I think you'll definitely see this be used at some of the lower ages for development. I know in Ontario, stick checking is still a foul in U9 and U11, so it's still modified at those levels. But by U15, I would say in most provinces, you would see these being laid out the way that they are written here. This is the big one. So we've gone through 24 changes, all, some are exciting. They're making the game a little bit more like sixes. They're getting rid of some like nitpicky stuff that's always made women's field people go, yep, that's our game. We love it. And always made people from other sectors be like, why? But this is the big one. This is motion number 27, was to reintroduce the previous versions of the 11-meter marking lines and markings, in addition to keeping the current 15-meter line. So if you've been playing the game or been watching the game in Canada for the last couple of years, we had just been using the goal circle, and pardon my bad drawing, the 15-meter marking area. Now, we are going to be using the old fan lines as they are seen here. Because we had made so many changes and the field lines have changed so much recently. Here's rocks. Because the field lines had changed so much recently, I understand that many people are really excited to get back to this. They've either been playing at US tournaments or, they're NCAA bound, and they're excited to have a little bit more consistency between the international game and the and what the US kind of just kept doing throughout the last 4 or 5 years. I believe, and I might eat my words on this, but I do believe that for the next little bit, this will be fairly consistent. I think internationally in the future, there might be a trend towards wanting to get away from penalties that are set up on the field. We're the only sector that does that. And I do think we're going to see people that want to try and force women's field to go to time served penalties. I don't necessarily agree that that's the best way to take the game, but for now, we are going back to the old field lines. The provinces that we spoke with in the Lacrosse Canada women's field calls when this was coming through, we're all pretty excited about this. Again, that consistency between what the US has continued to do and now going back to what we used to do, I think is a positive. But as an official and as somebody who's in charge of teaching a lot of 14-year-olds how to officiate, this is more complicated in terms of penalty administration. So I will take a little bit of time to go through how these 3 distinct zones within this marking area are impacted by different fouls and what to anticipate. But for now, we'll start here. So on the left, you're looking at the 15-meter marking area line, which is the 15 meters from goal. That's this one. We're looking at the goal line extended. And then we're looking at reintroducing the 11-meter fan, which is the fan shape. And if you consider the entire 11-meter space from goal, so this entire space in front of the net, this all here, this is called the 11-meter marking area. So the space in blue is going to be for penalty administration. The space in yellow is going to be specifically for 3 seconds. Give me 1 second to erase these. So let's get into what that kind of looks like. When we're setting, so let's say somebody gets fouled right here. We always set up major fouls at the nearest hash if it occurs inside 11 meters of goal. So that penalty is going to get set up at center hash. The person that fouled is going to go 4 meters behind. So if you've been involved in the game, this looks familiar to us, right? This is what we're used to seeing before we went to just having the 15. But now defensive players used to be able to line up in this space. We call this the pie-shaped area. Yes, that is its official name in the rulebook. But this space now no longer is a defensive space on a free position. So these players will have to move all the way out. And on any penalty administration, you need to get all the way out of the blue area for the restart. Defenders are still entitled to the adjacent hashes. We still do not use the third hash or the hanging hash for setups. So any foul that occurs within that pie-shaped area is going to move to the nearest inside hash for its penalty administration. So a foul happening here is actually going to get set up here. The hanging or third hash is just used to set a defender 4 meters to the side. That's all that is. So that would be that setup right there if the penalty occurred down here. And then the only other thing to say here is that there are no fouls set up on the hash mark along the goal line extended. So you'll never see a play set, or you shouldn't see a play set up on this hash mark down here. This is specifically just to keep defense out and attackers out of the 11-meter marking area, the blue space, on penalty administration. Whereas this fan, so the yellow space, is specific to enforcing 3 seconds. So this is our 3 in the key. Let's get into what those look like a little bit more specifically. So your midfield fouls, those have not changed. A major foul, someone's still going 4 meters behind. A minor foul, someone's still going 4 meters to the side. And a restraining line violation is still at the spot of the ball. It's a minor foul, someone's going 4 to the side. So if that foul happened right here, it would just get set up there, and that's a self-start. So no changes to the administration on midfield fouls of any kind. Restraining line fouls have also not changed. So if the ball was here where the red icon is, and one of the teams is offside, it's the same if it's the offense or the defense. No change. The ball is going to be moved to the player closest to the top of the 15. The nearest opponent's going to go 4 meters to the side, and it's clear 4 meters in all directions. Whistle start. No changes to that. So whether the ball is here in the corner, down by the end line, but so long as it's between the dots, all restraining line penalty administration is still up at the top of the 15. No changes there. Goal circle violations also have not changed. So if the attack stepped on the goal circle line and didn't score, or that's they're not allowed to step on the line when play is live. So that ball would still stay with the goalkeeper. The person who fouled is going to go 1 meter to the side on the goal line extended. Everyone else clears 1 meter around the goal circle, and it's a whistle start. No changes to that. Similarly, if the defense of the goalkeeper commits a goal circle violation, we're going to go all the way to the corner for the setup. The attack player that's nearest gets possession of the ball at the corner. If there's a defensive player who committed the foul, they go 4 meters behind back here. If the goalkeeper committed the foul, no one goes behind. So midfield fouls, restraining line fouls, goal circle fouls, no changes. What you're going to see changes to is the way that we think about minor fouls, although it hasn't actually changed. And what has actually changed is the major fouls. So for minor fouls, we're thinking of the tic-tac fouls, illegal procedures, illegal equipment, that type of stuff, held stick checks. If we're going to think of those as still being within the 15-meter area. So I gotta go back. So we're thinking of this entire semicircle area as being one space. Whether a minor foul happens here or here or here, we are always going to move the ball to the nearest spot on the 15-meter line, and that's where it's going to be restarted from. So if you basically have a minor foul inside inside anywhere that's within 15 meters above the goal line, it's going to go to the 15-meter line. 4 meters in all directions of the ball get cleared. Somebody goes 4 meters to the side to serve the foul, and it's a whistle start. So even if the minor foul happened right on top of the goal, it's going all the way back to the 15. That is not new. That is what we were doing when we only had a 15-meter line. So that is technically consistent, but it's going to feel weird because you're bypassing entire 11-meter marking area line and all those hash marks, bypassing all of that. All minor fouls are going to get served on the 15-meter line. So what is different is the 11-meter fouls and major fouls within the advantage flag area. So major fouls that happen below, no changes. Those are still going to the nearest dot. Someone's going 4 meters behind, whistle start. There's Marissa. But we want to focus on this area above the goal line. So for starters, let's say that there is a foul within the 11-meter pie-shaped area or the fan. If it's a major, it's going to the nearest dot. So this one would go here, and this one would go here for the setup. So we're going to the nearest dot, clearing the entire semicircle, whistle start. So that's the fan and MA. The setups are the same, whether the foul's inside the fan or inside the 11-meter marking area, that pie. What's new is what happens if there's a major foul between those two lines, between the 11 and the 15. This is going to be spot of the ball for major foul setups. But remember, if a minor foul happened in the exact same spot, you'd be bumping it back to the 15-meter line. So it's going to feel weird that major fouls can actually start from closer to goal. This is the way it's been written. I don't need to get into more about the feelings about how it was written. But a major foul that occurs between the 11 and 15, so same thing if it was right here, it's a whistle start, it's at the spot of the ball, somebody's still going to go 4 meters behind, and this one it would be 4 meters behind right here, and it's a whistle to restart play. And if it was just outside, then that is a midfield foul, and that's a self-start still. There are 2 exceptions, obviously, because we are still women's field lacrosse. One is 3 seconds. 3 seconds depends on where the ball is, not where the foul happened. So because 3 seconds depends on the fan, the player who is in 3 seconds would be theoretically inside the fan. So the setup for this, if the ball was outside, this is not a change, this is just complicated. Let's say the ball's out here and the little Susie's just posted up inside the fan. It's going to be this defender. So if this is the nearest defender, this defender here is going to go 4 meters behind, and then we clear in all directions 4 meters away. Whereas if the ball was inside and the 3 seconds was here, we're going to set up at the nearest hash mark. The foul occurred inside, so this player is going to go to the nearest hash. So that's the 3 seconds administration. Because the foul was in the fan, we're going to move the ball up to the fan line. And then shooting space is similar. So if we think about shooting space, you're eligible to be considered in shooting space as soon as the ball crosses the 15-meter line. So as soon as an attacker steps on that line, technically you could be eligible as a defender to be called in shooting space. So what happens if somebody humps from here trying to get a goal and there's a defender in this space? It's not fair to the attack to kill that, but it is a safety concern. So for the purposes of shooting space, we're going to say that, again, the foul happened in this space. Any shooting space fouls are going to get set up on the nearest dot. So 3 seconds in shooting space might feel a little bit odd, but we're going to set those up on the nearest hash. That's a lot. Are there any questions? We've at least gotten through our 27 or 25 proposals. If there are no questions, we'll take you through the last bit of the presentation tonight, which is about the shot clock. For anybody that's on the call that's from Ontario, it's kind of exciting. The OWFL had been using a shot clock in their elite league for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So we got to draw on that direct experience playing with a shot clock to write the shot clock rule. So it's not super dissimilar from what some Canadians have been playing with for the last little while. What I am excited about is that it's 80 seconds long. We had been playing with a 90-second one in Ontario. 80 seconds, I think, is a much better length. The 90 seconds kind of dragged sometimes. And for the shot clock for women's field lacrosse, you're looking at needing 2 shot clocks. There has to be an audible signal. So when the shot clock expires, there has to be a sound that goes off automatically or a horn that is done manually. And every time there is a reset of the shot clock, the team that gets possession of the ball is entitled to a full 80 seconds. So in the NCAA, who were the first to go to a shot clock, they had a 90-second shot clock if the goalie made a save. And then let's say the ball got up the field, that goalie's team took a shot on the opposite goalie. There was a save, but they got it back on attack. The officials would reset to 60 seconds. We're not doing that. World Lacrosse is going to be a consistent 80 seconds on the shot clock every single time that there is a change of possession or a reset for a shot or anything like that. A violation of the shot clock is not a foul. It's just a turnover. So nobody's losing stats on shot clock turnovers. We're trying to avoid people like tossing the ball, that type of stuff. And the shot clock is going to reset on a change of possession, on possession off of the draw. When a valid shot, which is basically a shot taken above the goal line extended, hits the goalkeeper or a pipe or a crossbar. If a team delays the game, that's a shot clock or a shot clock reset. If there's a card, so a cardable yellow or red card going off the field, that's going to reset the shot clock. And if there's a defensive injury, that's going to reset the shot clock. The women's field shot clock is also going to pause in certain scenarios. So for clock integrity, when the game clock is stopped, the shot clock will also stop. No brainer there. But it's also going to pause, even if the time was still running, on attack injuries, on either team calling a timeout, any foul by the defense in their defensive AFA. So this is the big one. Anytime as officials, we are administering any foul by the defense within that entire advantage flag area. So that's the marking area above and the space below. That is going to pause the shot clock. My understanding is that the signal for that is going to be this little X above our heads. No whistle accompanies that. So it's the timeout signal without a whistle. But we'll see what happens with the officiating manual, which is currently being rewritten. Any foul by the defense in their defensive AFA will pause the shot clock. And this is to, if there's only 5 seconds left on the, well, if it takes a while to set up or grab the ball or just set up a foul, they're not killing their own shot clock by getting set up. Karina, you had a question.
No, just letting you know that there's a question in the chat.
Thank you. Nico. I'm going to go back to this one. Nico's question is, can shooting space be called even if the shooter is just past GLE, just inside the 15-meter? Even that would be a crazy difficult shot. Okay, so shooting space general question. So if, let's say the shooter is right here, and there's a defensive player here, by rule, and there is actually a diagram on the rule book about this. Let's see if I can pull that up. And I'll just show you that one. Can you tell I do this a lot? So, Nico, to answer your question, shooting space is all about penalty lanes. So the yellow dots here represent the ball, and the lanes, the red lines from either side of the ball, the shooting space lane is defined as from the shooter or from the ball to the edges of the goal circle. So technically, yes, if somebody was just above, there would be a line going to the top edge of the goal line extended. Awful shot. Really bad shot selection. Technically, you could get called in shooting space, although a player posting up right here, I would have a hard time believing that they wouldn't be covering somebody. And remember, if they're on the line, they're fine, right? So if somebody's got at least 1 foot on this fan line, then it's no longer a foul for the 3 seconds call. So I would think that people are just going to clear out of that space for the lane. You look at this setup right here on the far right side, it's probably closest to what you're describing. Yes, any player between this ball and the top edge of the goal circle above the goal line is eligible for shooting space. But you have to be not within a stick length of somebody else. So are you really taking away that angle? No, but you technically could be called in shooting space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think sometimes like players sliding kind of could get in trouble, and usually I would use the elbows as kind of the line of like nobody's gonna be shooting below the kind of like the elbow mark, but sometimes I do. Like I coach college, and I just run into that sometimes where it's like that's not like that can't be shooting space. Like who is taking like that low angle shot? So
Yeah.
and especially the 15-meter just seems like a bigger area, so I'm starting to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, your decision as a coach to give that player hell for taking that shot or not, that's totally on you.
Right.
But is that player eligible for shooting space? If they're above the goal line, absolutely yes.
Right. Okay.
I would think that this player in this example would need to be left-handed, or at
Yeah.
least like shooting lefty for
Yeah.
me to call that. And remember, the dangerous propel is also a foul here.
Mm.
So if this player is, let's say they're not in shooting space, but still somebody decides to rip from the goal line,
Mhm.
that's their foul. The attack is responsible for taking care of the ball and taking care of other players with the ball.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for your question.
Of course.
Thanks, Karina. Coming back to our shot clock discussion. So a valid shot, again, is an attempt to score a goal that is taken when the shooter's crosshead is above the GLE. So if this is the goal line on the field, this is above the GLE. It doesn't have to be ahead of the goal line, it's above the goal line. The shot has to contact the goalkeeper's equipment, the pipe or the crossbar prior to the expiration of the shot clock to be considered valid and reset the shot clock. So in the NCAA, as a counterpoint, my understanding is that if a shooter shoots and the ball is released from their stick before the shot clock expires and the ball enters the goal, that would be a good goal. But in international play, we're trying to keep it consistent with we're trying to keep the shot clock reset consistent with what would be a legal goal. And in women's field, the ball has to cross the goal line before the buzzer to end the game to be considered a legal goal. So valid shot matches that, because valid shot isn't about goals. Valid shots is about resetting the shot clock. So if the shot is released, it doesn't matter if it's before the horn goes for the shot clock or the reset sound goes for the shot clock. It matters whether the ball made contact with the goalkeeper, the equipment, the pipe, or the crossbar in order to reset that shot clock and to be considered valid. That's it for the shot clock. Honestly, people have made a very large stink about, not stink. People seem to think it's going to change the women's game an awful lot. I think it's gonna eliminate stalling. We haven't really seen that where we've been playing with the shot clock, but 80 seconds is still a really long time. So I'm not super worried about the implications of this larger change, but it's exciting to play with. It really is fun. It keeps the game rolling, which is really nice. And over the next 2 years, we'll get an opportunity to kind of like practice with that before our national level teams get to use it at international events. So that's the shot clock. Next steps. So again, the Jenny Kyle Cup, our national championship, is going to be implementing this full rule book, all 25 changes for 2025 and 2026. The shot clock will be used at these two tournaments based on the ability of the host. So BC is hosting in 2025. They've assured us that they should be able to provide shot clocks, so we will use them for the event. 2026, it depends on who's hosting. And then just a quick overview, our goals tonight were to provide a brief overview of the rule changes, the process, and the cycle. We wanted to outline the specific motions that were approved for the new rulebook. And we wanted to review the shot clock proposal as it relates to Lacrosse Canada. So I think we've gone through those tonight. I'm happy to stay on the call for more time. I know a lot of people have questions as coaches, as players, and they don't really get to ask them very frequently. So if you are looking for your development point and you're still on the call, you are excused. Thank you so much for attending tonight. But if anybody has any supplemental questions that they'd like to ask, they are more than welcome to. And yes, to answer a direct question that I received in the chat, the recording will be sent to all participants who registered for tonight's session. I will be posting it to the OWFL YouTube page as soon as I have an access to the link or to the video file of the recording. And this presentation will be circulated along with that link to the video of the recording. So yes, this will be absolutely made available. If anybody has any questions, I'm just going to put I can't do it. My email is available on the OWFL website if you'd like to get a hold of me, owflofficiating@gmail.com. And I'm very happy as the OIC for Lacrosse Canada to help any province that's interested in resource sharing and putting stuff together for their season this spring, this summer, this fall. Lots to change. The biggest problem for me, thank you, Marisa. The biggest problem for me as the official in charge for all of this is having to redo every single diagram as it relates to women's field lacrosse for all of our internal resources and development tools. So that's why everything's taking a long time this year. But thank you again for your time tonight. And again, I'll stay on the call for anybody that has any other questions. So good night to everybody and good luck in your seasons this spring.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks for coming.
Hannah, I have a question.
I love questions. Paige, please hit me with it.
So the shot clock, does it start as soon as you get possession, like if you're in the defensive end, or when you cross the attacking restraining line?
No, as soon as there's a change of possession, the officials are going to give that reset signal, so it can happen anywhere on the field.
Okay.
It includes your time to clear the ball. There is no minimum time to get to half or to get to the far restraining line like there is in sixes or box. It's just you get possession, you get 80 full seconds of possession, go play.
Okay. And then when there is a shot clock violation, like you're on the attacking end, where does the ball restart? Just where it was, or
Spot of the ball. So a player should just if that horn goes off, that buzzer goes off for a shot clock violation, the ball's going to be dropped or handed to the nearest player, and it's from that spot. That player, if they're outside the AFA, can definitely self-start. It is outside, so it's totally permissible to self-start. If the ball is inside the AFA, it's going to get moved to 15.
okay.
So if it's below the goal line, it goes to the dot. If it's above the goal line, it goes to the 15, and it's going to be self-started or a whistle start from either of those two scenarios.
A whistle start.
Yeah. Any foul, any turnover, any play that happens inside and needs to be reset is always a whistle. The exception is boundary balls.
Okay. And that's just like clearing out, like everyone just clears out or like gives the
4 meters in all directions. You don't have to clear the entire 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question is like the stick checking, like if two players are going after a ground ball, can they only are they restricted to like just checking the top of the head of the stick? Do you know what I mean? Or can it be a little bit more aggressive, I guess, when
I want to be careful how I answer that.
yeah, I
Um,
guess because I coach a lot of box players, so I'm just wondering, like, yeah, what the
what I'll say is this. We've had what it's called has changed. It used to be called, we used to say like into the body or in the sphere. All
yeah.
of those checking fouls are now like this, they're still all fouls. We've just combined them into one rule, and that rule is called dangerous check. So any into the body, any in the sphere check, or someone like poking in the sphere, any check that in sixes or box you'd call a slash, all of those, that's our dangerous check. The parameters of that have not changed. So something that was illegal last year is still illegal this year. So we saw, I reffed a game with Carolyn, just an exhibition game, and we had one player just like two-hand. It was totally on stick. There was no contact to a body, but it was like a big, like from a shoulder down. That's still a dangerous check. In terms of can you be more aggressive? I would argue that the aggression level hasn't changed, but
Yeah.
can you empty stick check? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just like thinking like two players, okay, maybe they're like kind of pushing off of each other a bit, right? And then they like, I don't know, not like wide up past their shoulder, but maybe like a little bit more of a harder than just like a tap, a stick away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Stop share. No, it's still a foul.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still a foul.
There was something else I was just going to ask you, and now I forgot now. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to you. Maybe someone else has a question. Give me a second.
Please. Shay, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's kind of like aligned with Paige's question about the checking. It's more about back checking and what that looks like. In U13 right now, we're like teaching checking. Some of our kids are proficient in checking and really good at it and attempting to back check. Thoughts,
Sorry, by
feelings.
back checking, you mean checking from behind. So my stick's back here and you're checking
Correct.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's still within, like, it's not shoulder, shoulder, stick. It's like stick to stick. But it
Are
is behind.
sorry, Shay, just a clarifying question.
Yep.
If you're my defender, are you facing me or are you behind me in this scenario?
Either. I guess I'd love to know the answer for either of those.
Okay. So give me 1 second. I want to pull up. Dangerous check. Let's look at, I think the best thing we can do is to look at the rules.
Okay.
Let me use the language of the rule book here. Can you see this? The rule book?
If I turn to the side, I think I can. Yep.
Okay. So a dangerous check is written as this. A player must not roughly or recklessly check an opponent's cross, period.
Correct.
Players must not check an opponent's cross within a like a stick head's length of the head. The direction of the check must always be away from the player's head or neck, and checks must be controlled. So if I'm cradling, let's say, in front of my body, and the reason, Shay, that I asked to clarify whether you were in front of me or behind me is for this reason. If my stick is here, so I'm in like I'm cradling, but it's coming back towards me, and you check this, I would consider that to be not away from the head or neck. Like you're checking my stick into my body.
Into you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would consider that to be illegal.
Okay.
A check that causes the ball to go towards an opponent's face, or a check that forces the opponent's cross into their body. So that's that into the check. I would
Copy.
consider that to be a foul. However, there is a guidance, which is this language in blue, specifically in this book that says a check from behind is not illegal. So if I'm running up the field and my stick is hanging behind me and you checked it down, that's not checking my stick into my body. So
Okay.
that would be totally legal.
Okay.
The severity, the force, the recklessness, that matters in all checks, but inherently being from behind, not a foul.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Yeah, it does. I think it was more like what I've noticed with our players and like this player specifically, and like it works and no one is seemingly getting hurt. Like in our practices and stuff, no one's getting hurt. I think it's more just egos. But it's when there's like a roll. So they're rolling and they're switching hands, but the stick has like kind of stayed in that space and like the attacker's body is moved. And so the defender is checking this stick that is now sort of like out further, if you will. So
Did
it's still like stick to
Yeah.
stick because the body is moving away from the stick in a sense and away from the defender, like they're rolling off of them. But they've like as they're switching hands, the stick is sort of staying in the same place, if that makes sense.
I think I know what you're saying. I want you to take a video of practice and send it to me, and then
Yeah.
I'll give you a
Okay.
clear answer.
Okay. I will.
What I would say is that an attacker moving their body or moving their stick into something that is illegal, like that's their decision. Defense shouldn't be penalized for an attacker's decision. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
if defense is in a good position and the attacker turns and checks themselves, there's no check, right? A check is a defensive player making a checking motion.
Yes.
If you turn your stick into my stick, that is not a foul.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is definitely a check. It's
Okay.
definitely like a movement of the stick in order. It's not just like a bobble of or yeah, like the attacker accidentally putting their stick into the defender stick and then that's seemingly a foul or seemingly a check. It's like an actual like movement of the defender stick in order to achieve the check.
Mhm.
But it's not into the defender, if that makes sense.
I
Or
think
into
I think I
the
need to see this.
attacker. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find like I'll see if I can make a video at a
If they do
practice
it a
and send it
lot,
to you.
if they do it a lot, I'd love to see it.
Okay, yeah.
It's always great.
Okay, yeah. It came from a US camp, that's why. So I was
Okay,
like,
cool.
okay, cool.
Yeah, send it. That'd be great.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I remember my question now? Please want to answer.
What's that, Paige?
So just in regards to like picks and kind of slip picks, I guess when like watching like higher level lacrosse, and like I was always taught, you know, like they need time and space, right, to be able to like kind of stop themselves, and like maybe more in the vision of the defender. But I
Mhm.
feel like now watching higher level, it's maybe I don't feel like there's that much time or space or like that a defender could see it, like if they turn their head. Does that make sense? But it seems to
Yep.
be going okay. Like they're not calling it, I guess.
So I'm really glad you asked this. I always thought so illegal picks and blocks were separate rules in women's field lacrosse in the international book. We worked really hard to combine them into a single rule because the intent of both is the same. You shouldn't take away space that is not legally yours. It's dangerous, right? So that's the idea here. I can't speak to what, if you say the highest levels, like if you're talking about, RIP Athletes Unlimited or watching very high level NCAA, I can't speak to what their specific rule books say on this topic, but I can tell you exactly what makes a pick or a block legal or illegal in the international game because I think it's not what people think. So the first myth that I like to dispel is that a moving pick is illegal. So your slip pick is not inherently illegal. So we're looking at the block. This is 28.2 in the rule book. When what's going to make it illegal is a combination of these three things here on the second part of on the top of page 40. So let's go through this and then hopefully this helps answer your question. But a block is a player moving into the path of an opponent without giving the opponent the space and time to stop and or change direction, and contact occurs, creating an illegal pick. So when a player is running a blindside opponent from outside of their visual field, has to give them enough time and space to change direction in order for a pick to be legal or an attempted block to be legal. And the visual field is defined by the defender's nose or the opponent's nose. So if I'm looking over here, it's 180 degrees from where I'm looking, not my
Yeah.
shoulders. So what you'll see is like somebody set a pick here, but I'm looking over here. If I
Yeah.
move into it, it's always going to be a foul because it's not within 180 degrees. It's not within my visual field.
Okay.
But if we get into the nitty-gritty of the rule, a player must not set a moving or stationary pick that is out of the visual field, so blind, doesn't allow for time and space, and contact occurs. So a moving pick or block is not illegal. It's the combination of those three things there that makes a pick or a block illegal.
Okay, so could you I don't know, maybe I'm just not understanding right, but like if you're outside of the player's 180 field of vision, right, but they stop before they make contact with you, then that's okay.
I can only call a block if contact occurs.
Okay, so
yeah, contact has to occur.
okay.
So what you'll see is a lot of players get themselves out of illegal situations because their teammate tells them the pick is coming. So I can be totally focused on my attacker and know to get closer to them because my teammate is telling me a pick's coming behind me, right? So that's why this had to be rewritten. I would say a lot of people think basketball, I was there first.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. There's a shooting space video that I did last year that I will be updating. And it's got a really great clip of Dana Dobie from 2021, just like posted up. She's standing there forever, but it's legal because the defender, in the clip, it's a US defender, has no idea she's there. No, it doesn't matter how long the player has been standing in that space. It doesn't matter if she was there first. If you're outside the visual field and contact occurs, they didn't have space to move, that's going to be your pick.
Okay.
Does that help?
Curious, did Dana make the foul? Like, did she get a foul or it was okay?
No, it was a foul.
Okay. All right.
I'm
trying to think of because obviously like she does set a lot of picks and like watching like the world, like the worlds and stuff. And but I always felt like Dana's good at like being on the side, at least like the 180, like that you could kind of see. But yeah.
I'm not suggesting that she hasn't made beautiful legal picks before. Just in the example that's in our video, it's pretty legal. And it's that instance where like the defender gets caught off guard. You kind of see it. It's that like shit moment, right? Where they are not aware and they haven't made like if she'd taken a look on defense and seen that somebody was standing there, then yeah, it's not illegal. But the combination of those three things makes it illegal.
So could you technically be like stationary and then like kind of move out of the way so the defender doesn't bump into you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you'd be a moving pick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Which is the slip pick, to answer your first question. A slip pick is not inherently illegal. Yes. I would say that you see the slip picks get called when they push off. Like, are you pushing off of somebody? That's a illegal contact. That's different. But the moving pick itself, not a foul. And that's a very common misconception in the women's field game internationally.
Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to I didn't mean that obviously about Dana or sending a picture or anything. I'm just trying to thinking back because
I think she'd be fine. Yeah. I don't think she'd mind.
Right? Like, cause she's makes a good, I don't know how to explain it. You notice when she's setting them.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think, just a little bit more clarification, and obviously knowing that all three have to happen as well. Like the contact has to be made. So yeah.
Blind, right? Blind, no time or space to move out of the way, and contact occurs. And then we should be calling that consistently.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Hannah.
You're so welcome.
Not a lot of people to bounce ideas off of in Saskatchewan, so I apologize.
Don't apologize. If either the people that are still in this call have either left and just left their computers on, or are also still maybe interested, so it's totally fine. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for answering.
You're welcome.
Hi, it's Joe here. I didn't leave my computer on.
Thanks, Joe.
So I'm mostly a men's guy. So part of what I see sometimes a lot is with women in regards to a moving pick is they run a running block, like in football. they're running and slowing down so that the defender can't get at the ball carrier.
Oh, they're like kind of like pardon my cat's joining the call. They're kind of like sidling somebody out of the way.
Oh, absolutely. So because they can't run, because the defender can't go through them, and so they're slowly slowing down. They were behind the other player with normal play, but then they slow themselves down. So now this other player has to change direction, try to get around them when they're still moving. They're literally running a block. So in football, it would be the equivalent of running a block, or in rugby or anything like that, right? So I tend to call that as a moving pick. Am I based on what I just heard? That's or a block, I guess. It sounds like need to adjust that.
In the international game, theoretically, yes, because what you're describing, the visual field bit has been met. So the person who's being blocked is completely aware of the human being attempting to block them and needing to change their direction. That's perfectly legal. I don't want to say 100% that what you're seeing is the opposite of what the rulebook is suggesting. Again, this is where like video examples of this stuff are super helpful. So the version that Lacrosse Canada did that we did last year has some video examples of what's legal and what's not legal. It needs to be updated with the new diagrams, but otherwise I would say the intent of the last year's rule is still very much there. Can you see the person trying to block you out? If you can, yeah.
Because like
like
in men's sixes, box lacrosse, women's box lacrosse, men's box lacrosse, field tens, we would call that a moving pick.
I'd need to see it to give you a yes or no 100%, but it doesn't seem to satisfy our rule the way it's written.
Yeah, no, and that's okay, because I've always kind of scratched my head going, man, it would be almost just as good as the person was holding the person physically.
Yeah. But women's, I will say too, I took a men's field intro clinic this morning for officiating, so it's kind of in my head, but you guys call it a hold, like an on-ball hold, but we would consider it detain, to use your stick outside of your shoulders to slow down somebody else. That's a detain, not a pick, not a block. So
but they're not using any stick or anything like that. They're literally running in front of the other player, slowing them down.
If they see him coming, by rule.
Well, yeah, no, and I'm good with that. I was just trying to get clarity on that, because I'm going, okay, all right. Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. That's definitely something I would, if anyone has game film of something like that, I would love to see it. Even if it's not from women's field, just to get a sense of what the other sectors are seeing. Or like if it's a US clip or anything. Most of my clips are from the US. Thank you, Instagram. But yeah, if anybody has a clip of that, please feel free to send it to me.
Okay, I'll see what I can find. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
You're welcome, Joe. Joe, what province are you from?
BC.
Oh, amazing. Hopefully we'll meet you at JEWL.
I'm going to apply. That's one of the reasons I was on this call, so I could kind of figure out exactly what's going on. So
more stuff to follow on the officiating side for that, but applications are open for JEWL, so please do apply.
Yeah, I'll do that. And yeah, men's field, I was in Okinawa and we did one there. We were using the shot clock too, so.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
So that was interesting. It was, you guys don't have a 20 seconds to get it over, but so.
Correct.
But that actually created a little bit of a whiplash for us, because we were running into some challenges on reporting that, because we only had one shot clock and it was sitting at the bench.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. That's, I think logistically, it's one of the reasons we haven't done that, but we'll see what comes in the future. The shot clock rule will inevitably change. But this is the way it's written now. We'll keep that until at least 2027.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful time.
Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.
Are there any other questions for anybody else on the call tonight?
I have a question, Hannah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Sorry I came on late. I forgot that my time math was in BC today and not Alberta, so.
Oh, good.
For coaching Team Alberta, I want to get these rules out to players and parents. So is this like something that I can share with them, or is there going to be like a general parent player thing that we can send out, or can I just like put something together from your presentation?
Yeah. So i- I- I'm all about rule share, like resource sharing. So in the past, the OICs for BC and Alberta have been pretty good about sending stuff out.
Yeah.
This call, the recording of this call will be posted to YouTube. It will be public and accessible. This slide deck will be linked within that YouTube channel or that YouTube video. And it will be circulated with the video. All of the resources that I've created for Lacrosse Canada have already been sent out to your provincial MAs. So they have access to I do like a 2-page summary. The front side is rules and the back side is penalty administration. That's already been circulated. The rule book is completely public and available and accessible. So if you have any questions about organizing all of that stuff, I do keep them in a central space for your OICs within your provinces.
Okay.
Let me know, and I'd be happy to make sure that they have the right information. But it's meant to be shared. I know my thing that I always say is no rule is a secret. So please feel free to share everything that we're doing. And then the Lacrosse Canada specific videos for things like shooting space, 3 seconds, all of those videos will get posted to the OWFL YouTube page. So sorry, I just got a funny message. From some it's all good. But they're all available on the OWFL YouTube page. So
Okay.
but anybody is welcome to them within Canada, outside of Canada. Very happy to share resources.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I didn't share any of the stuff from here before it was like, okay, great.
Go for it. Yeah.
Hey,
I
thank you so much.
will assume I've made a mistake somewhere. So when you say your presentation said this, I will say, well, the rule book says this, and I'm capable of making mistakes, but otherwise, yes, happy to share this stuff out.